इतने सारे यूनिकॉर्न स्टार्टअप्स कोलैप्स क्यों हो रहे हैं?
There was a lot of liquidity coming into the system when he was available at literally 0% interest rates. People can take a lot of risks with that money. But then Federal Reserve and other reserve banks have started shrinking their balance sheets. And as soon as the supply stopped, it became difficult to sustain that kind of growth.
स्टार्टअप वर्ल्ड जो है ना एकदम ऑब्सेस्ड है यूनिकॉर्न्स से, सबको यूनिकॉर्न बनाना है, बट क्यों? We asked the same question to Harsh Pokharna today, the founder and CEO of OkCredit. And we also asked him about the startup accelerator that he's building, and also about getting into the top startup accelerators in the world today, like YCombinator. Let's go, and thank you for tuning into yet another episode of GoVenture. I am Pritesh Kumar, आपका host and co-founder of Function Up. मैंने स्टार्टअप्स बनाए भी हैं एंड बंद भी किए हैं. Hence, on GoVenture Podcast, we serve as a friendly reminder on all the things to do to grow and achieve your dreams. Join our group in the description to share stuff and startup networking with like-minded folks. And lastly, thank you for all the comments and love that you share. It means a lot to us. So Harsh, since you have been part of Y Combinator, and Y Combinator is probably शायद वर्ल्ड का टॉप एक्सेलेरेटर प्रोग्राम है अभी, and now you're yourself building Camel Club, startup accelerator. So I have this question for you. ये जो स्टार्टअप एक्सेलेरेटर्स है ना, लाइक YC, Techstars, 500 startups, Camel also Camel Club also now, are they worth it? Are the startup accelerators worth it?
See, I think for us, if I talk about Y Combinator specifically, it was worth it, right? And I also think that startup accelerators are worth it if, well, number one, if your peers in that startup accelerators are really good companies, because, well, because generally as entrepreneurs, we and early entrepreneurs, we are always building in silos, right? We are building just within our team, and we do not have a lot of exposure to how other teams operate, how, what are the things other people are working on, and how people deal with different issues in their companies if they are not finding PMF. I think getting exposure to that, especially in Silicon Valley, for me was a real confidence booster and very enlightening. कि मैं वहां गया हूँ, there are teams from MIT, there are teams from Harvard, there are teams from Google, or all the maybe best teams out there, and I am really getting exposed to how are they working, how are they solving their problems, how are they operating very efficiently, and how can we do that too. And one, when I went there, I realized कि यार मतलब we are also operating in a very nice way, we are also a very capable team when we compare ourselves to the best institutions around. So that was a great confidence booster for me. And second, I learned a lot कि कैसे करना है. दूसरा, I think, was that we found an accountability partner. When you are working alone, मतलब even if एक week हमने कुछ नहीं किया या फिर उतनी progress नहीं की, then you kind of slack off and you're like कि चलो कोई नहीं, अगले week कर देंगे. But when you are in that program and you are seeing, every week you have to go and share what progress you have made. And when you are seeing other people come up with good updates, it always motivates you to also, do better and do more progress. तो वो एक accountability partner वाला मेरे को काफी useful लगा. And third was, of course, accelerators, at the end, जो demo day is, I think, super worth it. Because if you have good updates, they call all the best investors from, around the globe who come and look at your pitches. And, and if you pitch well, you can generate so much FOMO at that time that some of the investors can really come in very quickly. Versus if I were doing this fundraising process myself, then finding those connects and creating that atmosphere where all people are very excited about my startup, and building that FOMO is very difficult, right? So a startup accelerator, I think, so I think good startup accelerators are worth it. But yes, there are a lot of bad or mediocre startup accelerators, where the peer group is not that great, the mentorship is not that great, even the network of investors is not that great. So they may not be worth it. Uh, so if they are taking upfront cash or a lot of equity, yes, they may not be worth it.
Definitely not.
But yeah, but if good ones are worth it, especially if you are a founder who is building in silos, who does not have a great network, or who um, who's maybe very early stage, who does not have a lot of experience working in other startups. So if you're someone who has experience, तो maybe इतना value नहीं add होगा other than the investor part. But if you are someone very early जिसको इन सब चीजों का भी exposure नहीं है, तब तो it can really add value.
फॉर अर्ली स्टेज फाउंडर्स तो डेफिनेटली वो स्टार्टअप 101 जो है वो बहुत लैकिंग होता है
हाँ,
एंड दैट इज समथिंग दैट एन एक्सेलरेटर can literally accelerate you on, right?
yes.
Yep. I think coming back, YC Sena, you guys got rejected 4 times. Eventually, Fury got through. Then OkCredit dhire dhire became one of the largest companies, Indian companies out of YC. So, any tips on how to get into some of these top startup accelerators in the world, be it Y Combinator, Techstars, 500 startups, anyone?
Yeah. See, I think it's all about your application, like how you write your application. And what I've understood after writing application multiple times, and also seeing helping other founders write applications, is so I think number one, you have to be super concise and मतलब बिल्कुल layman language में, if you can write what your company does and help even someone who is not very startup oriented या tech oriented, उसको भी अगर आप समझा सकते हो कि मेरी कंपनी क्या करती है, किसके लिए करती है, क्यों करती है, if you can write that, I think that really impresses these people, because these people have that mindset. If someone is writing very simply about their company and can without any jargons, without any complicated things, that person really understands their business, has a lot of clarity of thought, and is like very much appreciated. Second, of course, I think what they look for is, is your company making something which people want, right? And I think if you can position your application in a way that, why did you start this idea? How do you know people want what you are making? Some early uh, data or proof around why people are using your product or will use your product. So I think like that user or customer first approach on why you are building what you are building is, I think, very important. Third, which I really like, is like a lot of people focus on vanity metrics, कि मेरे पास 10,000 MAU है, मेरे पास 1,000 ये है, I'm doing 5,000 transactions a month. But I really think that what these people look for is customer love. While vanity metrics are good and you have to mention it, but if you can really mention the deeper metrics of why, even if you have 100 users versus a 10,000 users, why these 100 users are really loving you versus 10,000 liking you, right? तो वो मेरे को लगता है स्टोरी में बहुत ज्यादा ऐड करता है, if you have really deep metrics की, see how even 100 users, my super users, are retaining so much, they are coming every day on the app, they are maybe their payment sizes are increasing, they are referring other people. But those deeper metrics, I think they can really build up your story, uh, right? And uh, I
I
think
think
there's some of the
I
things.
think I third point पे ना I'll add something Harsh पता है so when we made our application to Y Combinator ना हमारे पास ना कुछ नहीं था, we just launched a product, ठीक है, 2 दिन पहले, और हमारा इंटरव्यू था आई थिंक मंडे या ट्यूसडे को, और हमने फ्राइडे को लॉन्च करा था, राइट? व्हाट वी डिड इज दैट वी रिकॉर्डेड अ वीडियो, ठीक है, हमारा एक स्क्रीन ग्रैब हमने रिकॉर्ड करा था, लिटरली स्क्रीन ग्रैब रिकॉर्ड करा था, वेयर व्हाट हैपेंड इज दैट lot of users were showing, adding to your point, were showing a lot of love, okay? They were enjoying what was happening on the screen.
Yes.
It was a gaming app, gaming कम entertainment mix करके रखा था हमने, तो they were enjoying what was on the screen. और बहुत सारा ना उसमें बहुत सारे कमेंट्स थे, बहुत सारे there was a lot of engagement there. And I also believe that is what got us in, because that showed कि people were loving what we were doing. Unfortunately, उस product में problems कुछ और थे. People did love what we were doing. I think so. What you mentioned is, yes, customer love, and the three things that you mentioned: customer love, being able to put things out simply, and building things what people want, right? Those are the key, exactly same experience, key things cracking some of the top accelerators.
Yes.
But I think you're also building Camel Club, but उसमें approach अलग है. We'll talk about that. But जो बड़ी company बनाने का approach है ना, वो बहुत different है. मतलब when you're building, typically most startups, most founders want to build एक बड़ी company बनानी है, right? पूरा mental setup ही different है इस केस में. जो mental setup है ना, approach है, वो एक sustainable type businesses बनाने का वो बहुत अलग है. But क्यों different है? जैसे मेरे को समझ में आता है कि पूरा अप्रोच चेंज हो जाता है जब आप यूनिकॉर्न टाइप्स कुछ बिल्ड कर रहे हो, बट हो क्या रहा है, व्हाट्स हैपनिंग?
See, I think जो हो क्या रहा है वो यही हो रहा है कि सी लाइक जब आप यूनिकॉर्न बनाने का ट्राई कर रहे हो देन लाइक यू हैव टू टेक वीसी मनी. And once you take VC money, you have to understand their, incentives versus the company's incentives. It's always like कि आपने equity ले ली है, now you have to increase valuation because only then do VCs really benefit. Like even if your revenues are increasing for 3-4 years, but you have not made a fundraise, like they can't show valuation increase on their books, and those increased IRR, rate of return percentages, which they have to show to their LPs to compete against the other VCs. So many times, companies actually have to do the things which may not be the best for the company just to get that financial support so that they can build a larger company. And I think that is the gap that we have been seeing between a lot of companies and VCs, where, like maybe the founders are not aligned towards building a business a certain way, but, they have to, because if they do not, they are not going to get future support, uh, right, from the VCs especially. So I think वो हो रहा है number one कि because of building a unicorn, people are doing things which may not be the best for the business for the long term just to get that short term support. Second, जो एक और चीज हो रही है is you see a lot of founders startup, right? And not every company is going to be a unicorn, but does not mean they are a bad company, right? They can still make a 200 करोड़ 300 करोड़ $100 million, मतलब उस तरह की कंपनीज बना सकते हो इवन इन इंडिया, राइट, without having a very large TAM or a very unique competitive advantage that I'll become the market leader. But these kind of companies VCs don't fund, of course, right? It's because it does not fit their thesis. But this discourages a lot of founders, राइट, एंड वो क्या करते हैं कि वो अपने उन आइडियाज को गिव अप कर देते हैं बिकॉज दे फील कि यार वीसीज फंड नहीं कर रहे, अच्छा आइडिया नहीं है, मैं आई शुड गो आफ्टर अ सेक्सी आइडिया विच द वीसीज विल फंड. And hence people founders move towards finding that unicorn level idea कि जो बहुत बड़ा market है, बहुत है, but many times they get some initial funding, but after 4-5 years those companies don't work out. The founders are not left with anything. They did not take any salaries, they did not get any exit, so they are left broke, and finally with a very negative sentiment towards the startup ecosystem, saying कि यार startups are not worth it, ये तो नहीं करना चाहिए, मेरी life खराब हो गई. So if there was some support for these kind of companies which were not becoming unicorns but maybe building a 50 million $100 million companies, then those the lives of those founders would have been much better, and even for the country it would have been better because more companies are coming up, more employment is being generated. uh, so that is my main disagreement with the unicorn kind of model. Well, it's not, see, of course, if you want to build it, but it's not for everyone, and we have to realize that, and make it normal कि यार आप unicorn नहीं भी बना रहे हो तो it's okay, and that's not a bad thing कि आप VC से आपको funding नहीं मिल रही है.
What's up, guys? Pritesh here. I hope you're enjoying the podcast so far. I want to take a moment to just personally ask you for your help. If you're enjoying the podcast, would you be willing to share it to someone who you think would love it too? Maybe a friend, a family member, or social media, or even in a conversation with someone you can mention. The recommendation means the world to us. And because of people like you that we are able to produce this podcast on a weekly basis. So thank you so much for your support so far. And I would love if you could help us reach more people who would love and benefit from it. Really appreciate it. And now back to what we do best. So what's the thought? Now you're also focusing on building something like a camel club, right? Camel club as camels as opposed to unicorns, right? We will survive, right? So what's the thought behind camel club?
So the thought again is similar. Ki, there are companies जिनका unicorn potential है and high growth companies burning a lot of money, and there's a lot of competition to invest in these companies. All the VCs, all the micro VCs, the hundreds of funds who are after these companies. The deal becomes very competitive, high priced, etc., etc. So can you find another set of companies, right, which will also grow and become large companies? Maybe, like moderate outcomes, not super big outcomes. Uh, but there's not a lot of competition, right, to invest in those companies. In fact, a lot of VCs even don't. So can you build another form of capital that can, invest in these companies and still give a win-win to the investors? Right? But these investors maybe come in with a different frame of mind, with a different return expectation versus what a VC promises, right? Because 100 VCs promise, very high returns, but 97%, 98% of them are not able to give those returns. So for the LPs, can you have a proposition that I am not promising as high returns as a VC? I'm offering you moderate returns, but with more certainty कि ये तो हो ही जाएगा, versus the high risk, high reward game they play with the VCs. So can you build a different form of capital with different expectations, different time period, frame of mind for these companies, which are what I'm calling camel companies, and help them build large businesses? Is something, like I'm trying to understand and uh, build using Camel Club.
So I think one more bit about यूनिकॉर्न्स दोज आर 21 से 2023 में ना इंडिया में खूब सारे यूनिकॉर्न्स बने राइट इंडिया का फर्स्ट यूनिकॉर्न वाज आई थिंक इन मोबी 2011 में यूनिकॉर्न बना था यूनिकॉर्न्स फॉर एवरीवन वाचिंग दिस इज आर कंपनीज वैल्यूड एट 1 बिलियन डॉलर्स अराउंड 8400 करोड़ राइट नाउ 2022 में इंडिया में 100 यूनिकॉर्न्स है 100 यूनिकॉर्न बना 2022 में ओला ओयो ग्रो फ्लिपकार्ट मीशो स्पिनी एक्सेट्रा इनमें सबसे बड़ा स्टार्टअप था बाइजूस राइट नाउ व्हाट हैपेंड इज आफ्टर दैट इज अ टोटली डिफरेंट स्टोरी 55 out of these 100 plus unicorns now made losses worth $6 billion within an year and lines से unicorns collapse हुए for example बाइजूस struggle कर रहा है financially and mass layoff हो रहे हैं बाइजूस में right but at the
Farming.
same time yes and farm easy right but still at the same time Byju's onboarded Messi as ambassador and was running campaigns during the FIFA World Cup regardless what happened was कि last एक दो साल में multiple unicorns collapsed, right? Even Paytm and Zomato, which did IPO, and within 1 year, unka stock price exactly one third हो गया था almost, right? So my question to you is, क्या हो गया? इतने सारे यूनिकॉर्न स्टार्टअप्स collapse क्यों हो रहे हैं?
See, like, and again, like, I would love to hear from you also on what you think. But like, what I understand is that during the COVID period and even before that, for some time, there was a lot of liquidity coming into the system because the Federal Reserve was printing a lot of money, and money was available at literally 0% interest rates for a long, long time. And there was a lot of money in the system, which was now so itna cheap money available hai, then people can take a lot of risks with that money, and that money was chasing high growth companies and like high return uh, opportunities. वो हुआ, but then after COVID and as the macroeconomics changed, where the printing of money stopped, and also like shrinking started, where the Federal Reserve and other reserve banks have started shrinking their balance sheets and pulling money out of the system versus, printing so much. So that definitely impacted the supply of money, and uh, so that really put pressure on these companies who were needing a lot of money to grow. And earlier they were getting that money to grow, but as soon as the supply stopped, it became difficult to sustain that kind of growth uh, path, right? And hence, then you have to take a deeper look at how you can reduce expenses, and how you can still survive your company, because money is not easily available. So I think वही है कि when the tide is high तो सब कुछ अच्छा है, but when the tide goes down you see that the king is naked, and that's what happened with a lot of these companies.
आई थिंक आई टोटली एग्री हर्ष. व्हाट हैपेंड हियर इज कि बहुत सारी कंपनीज ना बना ही रही थी कंपनीज और फंड रेज के लिए, राइट? कि रेवेन्यू फुलाना है अपने को, कैश एंड कितना इन द बैंक नहीं बढ़ाना है अपने को, रेवेन्यू बढ़ाते चलना है, व्हिच मींस दैट दे वर टेकिंग लॉस मेकिंग डील्स एज वेल. When you are building companies for the long run, what you do is you negotiate hard so that you know कि every dollar matters in the long run, in the short run, and you make sure कि आप आपका प्रोडक्ट अगर 5 रुपए का है तो उसको 4 रुपए में नहीं देते हो अपने रेवेन्यू को बढ़ाते रहने के लिए. आप उसको 5 से कम में बेचोगे, अगर इनफैक्ट 8 से कम में बेचोगे तो you'll be making losses. So that is what happened. People were building up their revenue numbers so that they could raise more funds, and suddenly what happened is that there are no more funds. There are no more funds to be raised, right? And that's when a lot of these companies started collapsing. But a last bit, Harsh, Club is to help founders build sustainable businesses rather than chasing unicorns. But startup ecosystem ना एकदम obsessed है with unicorns. क्यों obsessed हैं लोग unicorns बनाने में?
आई थिंक थोड़ा ज्यादा सेक्सी लगता है, मतलब व्हेन यू रेज अ लॉट ऑफ फंड्स एंड लाइक दैट इज, मतलब वो माइंडसेट बन चुका है कि मैंने बहुत ज्यादा पैसा उठा लिया है तो लाइक सेक्सी हो जाऊंगा, और बहुत सारे पीआर मीडिया पे ऑल अराउंड रहेंगे. एंड इट ऑल्सो, I think that's the major reason that it's cool to and also a very fast way to reach success, because people in this kind of world generally do not have that much patience or that much कि मैं 20 साल तक कंपनी बनाऊंगा. एवरीवन वांट्स टू चेस सक्सेस वेरी फास्ट, कि यार 5 साल में मेरी कंपनी बन जाए, एंड दैट इज द एटीट्यूड मोस्ट ऑफ द फाउंडर्स हैव.
And
बट
so validation.
हाँ, वैलिडेशन, और वही कि सक्सेस बहुत जल्दी मिल जाए, मेरे को फटाफट हो जाए, मेरे को ज्यादा यू नो बट इवन आई हैड दैट माइंडसेट ऑनेस्टली, राइट? व्हेन आई स्टार्टेड माय स्टार्टअप जर्नी, इवन एंड पीपल टोल्ड मी कि भाई स्टार्टअप इतने आसानी से नहीं बनते हैं, लाइक दी ओल्डर पीपल लाइक हु आर मोर एक्सपीरियंस्ड, एंड आई लाफ्ड देम ऑफ. आई वाज लाइक कि क्या बात कर रहे हो यार, मैं तो देखो अब 3-4 साल में बहुत बड़ी कंपनी बना दूंगा. एंड लाइक आई ऑलवेज हैड दैट काइंड ऑफ एनर्जी, एंड आई ऑलवेज, but now that I have, first 2-3 years failed at building startups, and I've been building OkCredit for almost 7 years since. So now I know कि इतना 2-3 साल में तो कंपनियां नहीं बनती हैं, और जो बनती भी हैं फिर वो ऐसे ग्राउंड्स पे बनती हैं कि वो ज़्यादा लंबे समय तक नहीं चल सकती. तो if you have to build a company, you have to have that patience of at least 10-15 years तो लगने वाले हैं अगर एक बड़ी कंपनी बनानी है तो. So I think that mindset is not there in founders. People are chasing quick success, and it's very cool also in the media, and everyone romanticizes being VC funded startups. So those are some of the reasons why people chase that.
I think Harsh, your journey na has not just been inspirational but also been very grounding, right? I think listening to you will help a lot of people understand the startup world for real, and whether the startup world is for them or not, and if it is for them, how to think about building companies, right? How to think about building brilliant companies like OkCredit, for example. Like I said, ki inspirational as well as grounding. Thank you for coming on the show, Harsh. It was brilliant talking to you, man. If you enjoyed this, it would mean a lot to me if you subscribe and share your thoughts, reviews, and the guests you want. Join our group in the description, and दोबारा मिलते हैं next discussion में.